Assalamualaikum and good greetings. So today we'll be watching a video titled My Honest Thoughts on the Quran, in bracket, I'm a Christian. This is by Dex Van der Wel. We have watched all the previous episodes prior to this on his thoughts on each surah that he covered from the Quran. You can see the link for those videos in the description box below. Without further ado, let's watch.
What is up, everybody? My name is Dax. If you don't know me and this channel, I like to compare Christianity and Islam, the two largest religions on the planet. And today is a special day, special video, ladies and gentlemen. This is the final episode of Christian Reads Quran. Here we go. So, over the last 6 months or so, I, as a Christian, have been reading the Quran, the holy book of Islam. And I've been leaving comments, questions, and objections along the way from a Christian perspective. And this is the final video. These are my real, honest, raw thoughts about the Quran. Basically, in the last episode, I talked about how I want to start making some other content. I want to hop into some other video series about Christianity and Islam. I want to talk about Muhammad versus Jesus. Which one is more moral? I want to talk about...
Of course, that question only valid from a Christian point of view, right? Because you have the thoughts about who Muhammad is. From a Muslim perspective, we never compare who is more moral among all the prophets, because no prophets and messenger have any problem with their moral. Otherwise, they wouldn't be selected as prophets and messenger to become the prime example of how you live according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have commanded.
About Bible versus the Quran, which one is more reliable? I want to talk about Trinity versus Tawheed, which one is more logical? But
which one is more logical? It is very straightforward if you ask me, right? Between Trinity and Tawheed. The justification for Trinity is not that much of a logical, even from his what he have said before in the discussion of, because he posed the question, if Quran or if Allah mentioned or told you that the Trinity is the nature, would you accept it? It's more of how it is being revealed, would you accept it? That's his position from what he have said before. It's not about logically you would come to that conclusion, right? Because if you in isolation of any books, etc., the logical conclusion is one, and Christians do believe that Allah or God is one as well, right? So that's the logical conclusion that we can get without any interference of information. But to get to the Trinity, it's not by logic.
in order to hop into these other series, I need to end this one, Christian Reads Quran. So basically, I was already over halfway, but this last month, I decided to just grind every single day, and I just finished the Quran, read the rest of it, every single page, front to back, and these are my honest thoughts. This is the last official episode of Christian Reads Quran. And also, thank you so much. If you've supported this series, if you've liked, if you've commented, subscribed, all the above, I super appreciate you. This series has been a blessing for me. I've been able to learn so much about Islam, and I pray that it has been a blessing to you as well, and that you've learned something in some way. With that being said, don't forget to drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. All right, let's hop in. So, the first half of this video is going to be 3 things that I appreciate about Islam, and the second half of the video is going to be 3 things that I don't appreciate about Islam. Also, some of you people who really like to debate, you like conflict, you like confrontation, you're going to be tempted to just skip to the second half of the video, 3 things that I don't appreciate. Don't do it, okay? I invite you, stick around, please listen to these 3 things. I really am being honest. These are 3 things that I really do appreciate about the religion of Islam. So, let's hop in. Number 1, the first thing that I appreciate about Islam, I already glimpsed it up there, is Islam is simple and straightforward. Islam is simple and straightforward. This is something that I appreciate. So, as someone who I had little to no understanding of Islam before this series, but I found that it was actually really easy for me to understand the basics of Islam because it's straightforward, it's simple, it has some core ideas that come up consistently, that come up again and again, and this is something that I appreciate. An example of this would be the Shahada. All right, the Shahada. There is no God but one, no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. This is the central proclamation of the faith of Islam, and it's simple, it's straightforward, it's easy to understand. There is one God, monotheism, God Allah, that God is Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Therefore, read the Quran, which is the message that came through Muhammad. That's simple, that's straightforward. I could see someone out there thinking about worldviews, thinking about religions, and I could see them being attracted to the religion of Islam because of these simple ideas, because it has some basic core ideas that are easy to understand. Another example of this, of Islam being simple and straightforward, would be the 6 articles of belief, or the 5 pillars of Islam. Simple, right? These are the 6 main beliefs of Islam, core beliefs, articles of faith, articles of belief. And then the 5 pillars of Islam is basically what it looks like to be a Muslim. So it's really easy to understand, cool, this is what a practicing Muslim looks like. This is what their life looks like. Simple, straightforward. And this is the first thing that I appreciate about the religion of Islam. Now, for the second thing that I appreciate about Islam is this is more so about Muslims in general, but this is about Islamic culture. And it is that Muslims are incredibly passionate. If you're a Muslim, if you're not a Muslim, you probably already know this. You probably already have observed this in some way, but Muslims are really passionate. You meet a Muslim, they are like ride or die for their faith. They're like, yes, my faith is everything to me. And I respect that. I do. I appreciate it. I wish every worldview had that much passion. I wish everyone else was as passionate about their beliefs as most Muslims are. When I look to, let's say this, if I made this series about Buddhism or about atheism or Hinduism or whatever, there wouldn't have been the kind of response from other people, right? Because Muslims, again, they're so passionate about their beliefs, they're so passionate about their religion that they're willing to listen to some Christian babble for 20 minutes about their belief system and about the Quran.
I think many religion do not have this aspect because it's just a religion, right? Meaning that, for example, someone says that there are many ways to God, so I select this. So they wouldn't be that passionate about that because it's just a choice they make from many different choices that they think is viable options. Some just because they are raised into it, they just live by it. It's not really that they think it is true or etc. It's a good way of life. It gives me purpose, etc. Right? So those kind of reasoning tend to lead towards less passionate about it, right? But once you really believe, and I think this would be in theoretically, right? This would be the common theme between Muslim and Christian, and perhaps some atheists, because once they truly convinced this is the truth, and hence everyone else that is not complying with this one or not accepting this one is on falsehood, and there are repercussion, there are implication of that, right? For example, from Muslim and Christians, the implication is that you will end up in a place that you don't want to be, and we care for you, hence we are passionate to share it with you, right? So I think it would be common for Muslim and Christian in this sense, theoretically. For atheists who really believe that there's no such thing as a God, everything this is man-made, and etc., and the teaching is harmful for society, for human, for etc., right? They tend to be passionate as well because they care about people, and they do not want people to continue on the path of self-destruction, right? So you can see passionate atheists become passionate as well. So this is the three groups that I can think of that because the worldview and the religion leads to that place of passion. I'm not that familiar with Hinduism, Buddhism, etc., and I don't know that, because I'm not sure. Theoretically, perhaps you can argue as well if you believe in reincarnation and you don't want others to reincarnate as something hideous or something. I'm not sure. Would that be the same conclusion as being passionate to save the others? If you are from other religion, like Buddhism, Hinduism, etc., feel free to share whether you would think as well.
Another angle at this, let me just say this, is I live in the West, all right? I live in the postmodern West, where a lot of people think that truth is relative. A lot of people around me don't even think that it matters whether there is a God or if a religion is true or not. And that drives me crazy. It's so annoying. So many people that I'm around, they don't think it matters that there's a God. They don't think it changes anything if that God has spoken. And that sucks, okay? Let me just say that. But something that I have appreciated is that Muslims are passionate and ready and want to talk about their beliefs. My Instagram DMs have been filled with Muslims. I've received so many emails from Muslims along the way, again, wanting to have conversations about truth, about belief, about their religion. And this is something that I appreciate. I wish other worldviews had the same sort of drive to talk about their beliefs or defend their beliefs. This is something that I do appreciate. And the third thing that I honestly appreciate about the Quran and Islam is this. Islam is closer to the truth than other worldviews and religions. I think
this is from the perspective of a Christian, I would think, right?
I think that Islam is closer to the truth or has more truth in it compared to other worldviews and other religions.
My question is whether his statement here includes Judaism, or would he consider Judaism is closer than Islam and Islam is closer than the rest?
Now, this point might seem a little surprising, maybe even confusing to some people, Muslims and Christians. But here's the thing. I was trying to evaluate the truth value that I think Islam has, and this is the best way that I can put it. So an example of this, what do I mean by this? First of all, not every worldview and religion can be true, right? Because worldviews are different. They contradict each other. So all religions can't be true because they logically contradict. But the second thing that we can note is that some worldviews might be closer to the truth or might have more truth in them compared to other worldviews and other religions. The best example of this would be the existence of God, okay? I think it's obvious that there's a God. I just wake up, look outside, and I'm like, yeah, there's a God. That's pretty clear. I think the arguments for the existence of God are really good. I think it's intuitive that there is a God. It just makes sense that there is a God at the foundation of this reality or as the source of this reality. I think there's a God. Therefore, if a worldview believes in...
When he say I think, it's interesting choice of words. Yeah, because it's more of like, because think that it is not normally used to a level of conviction or convinced, right? Or is it just me that use it that way?
In a God, I think that worldview is closer to the truth or has more truth in it than a worldview that denies the existence of God. Atheism, some sort of atheistic naturalism that denies the existence of God. So if a worldview believes in a God, I think that worldview is automatically closer to the truth than a worldview that denies the existence of God. When it comes to Christianity and Islam, the reason I say this is because Christianity and Islam actually share many foundational ideas. There's a lot of commonality. They share a lot of common presuppositions. And because I think Christianity is true, if Islam shares a lot of foundational ideas or presuppositions with Christianity, by default, I think Islam is closer to the truth than a worldview that has nothing in common with Christianity.
Now, I wonder whether he come to this conclusion just recently, because I thought this would be, because for me, this would be the first thing that I would assume, the three religions, right? Christian, Judaism, and Islam. Because the core foundation is the same, right? There's a God, God sent prophets, etc., right? But above that is where we differ. For example, who is Jesus, who is Muhammad, etc., right? But the core belief of God created human being, etc., there's a purpose, etc., all of those are the common between the three so-called Abrahamic religion, right? So I would assume people from any of the three religion would start off with that. I would assume. I would be surprised if this is his newfound thought, meaning that he never realized that Islam has so many similar components as Christianity. I would be surprised, but at the same time, I do understand that many non-Muslim outside of the, I don't know, Muslim majority countries perhaps, is not familiar, hence they didn't even realize it. For example, many Christians didn't even realize that Jesus is being mentioned specifically in the Quran, Mary, etc., other prophets. Yeah.
All right, Islam and Christianity both believe in a God, and this God is distinct from creation, the creator of everything. We both believe in angels and demons and judgment day and prophets and revelation and whatnot. So because of this, I have to admit, I think Islam has some truth in it. Now, don't get me wrong. I know some of you guys are already on there. Yes, we disagree on the specifics of these ideas. We still disagree on the nature of this God. But still, at the end of the day, there are some common ideas. There is some common ground between Christians and Muslims. There are some ideas that I think are good, that do make sense of the world around us in Islam. And so because of that, I have to say, I think Islam is closer to the truth than other worldviews and religions. With that being said, three things. No, we're not ready for that yet. We're not ready for the drama yet. Okay, here we go. Three things that I appreciate about Islam. Number one, after the last 6 months of studying the Quran and Islam, I appreciate that Islam is simple. At least the core ideas that are simple, intuitive, easy to understand. Number two, I think Muslims are passionate. And number three, I think Islam has some truth in it. I think it's closer to the truth than some other worldviews and religions. But of course, however, as I transition to the second part of this video, just because Islam might be simple, just because Muslims are passionate, and just because I think there is some truth in Islam, that does not mean that I think Islam is true. In fact, I don't. I still have several objections against the Quran and against the religion of Islam. So let's hop into those. The reason you came, I'm sure. Three things that I don't appreciate about Islam. Number one, the first thing that I do not appreciate about Islam is simply this. All right, the Quran claims to confirm the Bible.
Okay, I have mentioned about this many times. If anyone follow me, right? It doesn't say, because you have to define what is the Bible, what you mean by the Bible, because the Quran is in Arabic language, right? So what do you mean by the Bible? Do you mean, because the Quran says about Taurat, about Injil, about previous books in general. So what are you talking about? Because if the Quran says about Taurat, it specifically also said that Taurat is the revelation to Musa or Moses alayhi salam. If you're talking about Injil, it specifically mentioned that Injil, what it means by Injil is the revelation to Isa or Jesus alayhi salam. Right. So Christian always quote this. Quran claims to confirm the Bible, but I always ask, what do you mean? And some of them, interestingly, never actually realized that Quran is in Arabic. Hence, they thought the translation, because some translation do translate Injil to Gospel. I'm puzzled at that translation, to be honest, based on my understanding what Gospel is from Christian point of view, and it doesn't really match with what is Injil in the Quran. So yeah, so when they say Quran claims to confirm the Bible and then start to elaborate and build their argument on top of it, first you are building something on top of something that is, it's falter already, right? So that's why from their perspective they actually believe that Quran claims to confirm the Bible. Hence I'm puzzled onto this.
The Quran claims to confirm the Bible. This is something that I don't appreciate. So let me unpack this. This is Surah 2, verse 41. There's a lot of examples that I could give of this. But this verse is talking to Jews and Christians, and it says this: believe in that which I have sent down, confirming that which you have with you. So the Quran is basically telling the Jews and Christians that it confirms what they have with them. What they have with them is the Torah and the Gospel. Or in other words, we would say the Bible. The Quran claims to confirm the Bible. So why do I not appreciate this? Well, simply because I think this is a really confusing claim. I know that because there's a lot of Muslims who disagree with this. I heard a lot of different opinions from different Muslim thinkers and apologists. And so this is something that I don't appreciate. First of all, the Quran does not confirm the Bible. If you read the Quran, which I just did, and if you read the Bible, which I have again and again, they don't agree. They completely contradict each other. They're not on the same page, okay? They're not from the same source. There's just no way. The Quran does not confirm the Bible. Apart from this, of course, to anticipate a response, many Muslims will argue, well, that's because the Bible is corrupt. The Bible has become corrupted either entirely or partially. So most Muslims would say, well, there is some truth in the Bible, but for the most part it's corrupt. That's why it seems to contradict the Quran. But the problem I have with that is, first of all, that's not what the Quran says. I was, reading the Quran, this is one thing that was on my mind that I was looking for, but the Quran actually speaks highly and very positively of the Bible, of the Torah and Gospel.
Of the Torah and Injil, yes, obviously. The revelation, the past revelation, obviously, because the Quran, because it's from the same source. So I think the nuance here is, first and foremost, let's be clear what you're talking about when you talk about Bible. I assume from the Christian perspective, you don't distinguish, or you don't need to distinguish between the Bible, the Torah, and Injil, or the Gospel, right? And whether or not they are revelation, etc. Because I'm still trying to process about Torah in the based on the information that you have given so far. But the Gospel is you can say it is accounts that in portion cite or highlight certain revelation. You can say that. For example, they say that Jesus said this or something, but in itself you cannot say it is a revelation, right? Because it's being written by someone about Jesus, about what happened, etc. So it is more like an observation of, and part of the observation may be what the spoken words of Jesus, etc. Right? So yeah, I think that's the nuance. If we want to discuss on this topic, we first have to establish what we are talking about, because I think many of my problem is, in the comment section with some of you, is that when you say something, you mean something else with that word, when I mean something else, and then we could never reach a meeting point because we don't properly define what we're talking about.
It says again and again, this confirms what you have with you, which means that the Jews and Christians can trust what they had in the 7th century. And if the Bible was trustworthy in the 7th century, then it's trustworthy now. I say that because the manuscripts that our modern Bibles are based on predate the 7th century. I'll make a whole video about that another time. But basically, I don't see the Quran saying that the Bible is corrupt. I see Muslims saying that, but I don't see the Quran saying that. And I think there's some weird, confusing tension there.
Now, on this point, many Christians actually ask me about to show me whether the Bible is corrupt, when I never mention anything as such. I never make a claim, never make a statement saying that the Bible is corrupt. I'm just, normally if you go all of my videos, my consistent statement is the Bible is not the revelation. At least the New Testament. I'm still trying to understand what the Torah is. But from reading Genesis, because I read only the early part, right? So it does sound like it could be claiming to be revelation, because meaning the one that utter the words is God, for example. But I haven't read the rest, right? But for the gospel, etc., it is from the perspective of someone, right? It's more of a sirah if you compare to Islamic sources. So because when you say corrupt, it means that if I say the Bible is corrupt, it would imply that originally there's a pure Bible and that it becomes corrupted. If we are talking about the message of the prophets, is the message of Jesus corrupted? I would say yes. But if we're talking about the specific book, for example, the Bible, I never make a claim that the original, Bible as we can find it today is actually pure message. Because if it's written by someone who wrote any of the gospel, how do we know the message in itself is 100% pure? Right, so my position is that I never claim or never make a statement. Of course, I know many Muslims would say that it is corrupted. I'm not sure what they mean exactly, so you have to ask them.
Another part of this is, I would say, even if the Quran did confirm the Bible, but the Bible became corrupt, then that means the Quran is confirming a corrupted book. And last, let me just say, why would Allah reveal the Torah and Gospel, but not preserve them, knowing that he was going to send a final revelation that claims to confirm what was revealed before?
If you ask that one, you have to ask about all the message from all the prophets, right? Because I'm not sure whether Christians believe that prophets begins with Bani Israel, with Abraham, for example. I don't think so, because they believe in Noah. But I have asked this one of the Christian commenters, right? Because he said that all the prophets in Christianity is from this lineage, from Abraham and then to Isaac, right? Is it? Because the lineage of that goes to Muhammad is Ismail. This is Ishaq, right? Isaac, right? Correct me if I'm wrong with the name. But they say that all the prophets of Christianity here, and suddenly the Muslim claim suddenly it shifted here, right? So, but I asked about Noah. So what is Noah? Because Noah is prior to that, right? So how can you say all prophet is in this lineage when Noah is further up? And then he never commented back, I think. Right, so yeah, I'm not sure whether they consider the previous prophet, as prophets or what. But anyway, what was my point? I forgot.
This doesn't make any sense to me. This is really confusing. Why would he send a final revelation that says, hey, I'm here to confirm what went before, the Quran confirms those.
Okay, that point, if you read about those kind of verses, it's mainly with regard to the Ahlul Kitab at the time. It's not about any others that don't even know about the previous revelation. It's not even important for the rest to dig up what is the previous revelation, because the Quran, just like the Injil, just like the Taurat, just like whatever message come earlier, can stand on its own, right? Unless you believe that, I'm not sure whether the Christians believe that what Jesus brought forth can stand on its own, or it has to rely on what was revealed to Moses. Okay, so educate me on this, because if you actually have that mindset that no, the the gospel cannot stand on its own, because without the Old Testament, without the Torah, people will never understand what is the truth. So it dependent on the previous one. If you have that kind of mindset, perhaps you would have this question about the Quran. But from a Muslim perspective, the Quran can stand on its own, just like the Injil can stand on its own, just like the Taurat can stand on its own, just like any previous message can stand on its own. The people of Noah, whatever they need to know, whatever they need to understand, whatever they need to practice is from what is revealed to Noah alayhi salam, etc. Saleh, I don't know, perhaps Sulaiman, because we never have the story of Sulaiman and the mother. Yeah, we have with the queen of Sabah, right? So whatever is revealed to him is sufficient for the mother, for those who need to worship God at the time, right? So from that perspective, the interaction or the verses as highlighted there, that this is just confirming what you have with you, is specifically for the Ahlul Kitab. So that's number one. It is not a message that we have to go back to previous scripture to understand Islam. It's not. It's more of to addressing with you. No. Why are you contesting this when this just confirm what you have with you? So that's the interaction, and we can go into that between Islam and the Ahlul Kitab, right? Because many of the Ahlul Kitab that become Muslim, actually, you can see the Sirah, they testify to this, right? That's why the Jews, whether they accept it or they reject it, from the Sirah we can see that they know that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam confirms, or what we observe in him confirms what we have, what we await of the prophets that will come. This is him, right? So they testify to that. So that's the context basically. It's not like you know, it's because Christians think Muslim that is not from Christian background, not from Judaism background, actually needs when the verse says confirm what is with you, Muslims should actually go to the previous verses. You have to read those verses in context to understand what it's talking about.
But we lost those. But he didn't preserve his words in the Torah and Gospel. That's really confusing. That means we have no way of knowing if the Quran really confirms what went before. It's just kind of all over the place. And because of this, it's confusing. I don't appreciate it. And yes, I will start.
If you say we as of now, perhaps you have a point. But we, if you live back then, from what we cover from the Surah, they know. Yeah. So because us, we don't even need to, meaning that verse in its context doesn't push us to actually go back to Taurat and Injil. Right, because Muslim, even in the time of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, if you take that verse in context, it is addressing the question from the Ahlul Kitab. The rest, the Mushrikeen, etc., we don't have verses like that. We don't have, okay, you want to be Muslim, first learn the Taurat or Injil. Never. The Quran never says that. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam never said that. So that's not a big foundation of Islam. It does say that the previous verse, the previous message or revelation is the same teaching, and hence you should go back to the previous revelation for Ahlul Kitab that have those.
Study this more. I'll probably make a whole video about it moving forward. But as of right now, it's a confusing point. It really is. All right. The second thing that I don't appreciate about Islam is this. Islam claims that Muhammad is in the Bible, or the Quran claims that Muhammad is in the Bible. Of course, I'm talking about Surah 7, 157. I'll read it up. It says, those who follow the messenger, the unlettered prophet, Muhammad, whom they find inscribed in the Torah and Gospel that is with them. So once again, we see that this verse, it assumes that the Torah and Gospel can be trusted in the 7th century, which means it can be trusted now. But more than that, it says, whom they find inscribed in the Torah and Gospel.
So, the Torah and Gospel in the Quran, if you go, you can check this out, right? Taurat and Injil. So, because when he says that is the Bible, so my first contestation is that. Right? So, for those who can go to the Taurat and Injil, yeah, it is in there. So, basically that is what the verse meant. And at the time, I'm not sure about Christians, because from the Sirah, the one that have this big issue is most from the Jewish community. And Who was the lady that become Muslim? Because he testified that the parent, because in at home, right, she listened to the parent that says that we know this is the guy that is mentioned in our book, which is the Torah. However, because it is from different lineage, we have a problem with that. So from those kind of stories in the Sirah, we can understand where this come from, or how this verse confirmed the reality back then.
And this verse leads to this popular argument from Muslim apologists that Muhammad is in the Bible. That means that I, as a Christian, should be able to go in the Bible and see Muhammad clearly prophesied about in there. But the problem, the reason I don't appreciate this, is because I don't see Muhammad in the Bible. Not only that, but I would say that some of the arguments that I saw from Muslim apologists about Muhammad being in the Bible were really, really bad. I saw some horrendous arguments. Like, I saw people, some Muslim apologists, I'm not going to accuse them of being deceptive on purpose, but some of them, like the manipulation that they had to go through to distort the scripture to seem like it's talking about Muhammad was pretty crazy to me. Like, I was shocked by it. The worst example of this, and I do agree it's the worst example, is Song of Solomon 5:16. All right, I think it was Zakir Naik and some other Muslim apologists. They try to argue that the name of Muhammad is found in Song of Solomon 5:16. No, it's not. Like, I don't know how else to put it. And the logic here, the argument here, is really, really bad. So basically, to try to argue that the name of Muhammad is in Song of Solomon 5:16, you have to ignore the context, you have to ignore the definition of the word, and you have to mispronounce the word for it to even sound like Muhammad. In no logically possible universe is Song of Solomon 5:16 talking about Muhammad. There's no way that the name of Muhammad is found in this verse. Really bad argument. And yes, I do think there's some better ones, like Deuteronomy 18, John 14, John 16, Isaiah, I think it's 40 or 42 or something like that. But without a doubt, from all these arguments, I do not see Muhammad in the Bible. And from what I saw from Muslim apologists, I saw some horrendous logic, some manipulation, some distorting of the scripture that I just really don't respect. And because of that, I would say I have to say that the Quran claiming that Muhammad is in the Bible, I simply don't appreciate this. I don't respect it. I don't see it from a truth standpoint. It just doesn't make sense. And to conclude that Islam is true, I would have to see Muhammad in the Bible because it says so. Because this is what 7:157 says. All right, moving on. Excuse me, I had to burp. All right, number 3. The third thing that I don't appreciate about Islam is this. Muslims often commit the appeal to authority fallacy. Muslims often commit the appeal to authority fallacy. The reason I bring this up is because, first of all, I care about truth. I want to push you closer to the truth. I want to push myself closer to the truth. But if we're going to base our lives on truth, we need to be able to reason well. So we need to get rid of any logical fallacies. We need to get rid of any incorrect reasoning. And that's what a logical fallacy is. It's an incorrect way of reasoning. Now, the scary part about logical fallacies is sometimes they sound good. They seem like good arguments, even though they're not. Their logic is really, really bad. And over the last 4 to 5 years, I've been able to talk with a bunch of different religions and worldviews, people of different religions and worldviews. And I've realized that certain people groups gravitate towards certain logical fallacies. And from my experience, the last 6 months, Muslims really like the appeal to authority fallacy. And so that's why I have to point this out. This is something that it's got to stop. All right, it's got to stop, people.
So this is about Muslim, I think, right? Muslim often commit, because I'm waiting for the example, because I also want to understand which type of statement that falls under this fallacy. Because I know many Muslims have many different, I don't know, problematic ways of understanding things, of arguing things. But this is not really about Islam, I believe.
Here's the thing. An appeal to authority fallacy occurs when someone uses the authority or expertise of a person as the main reason to support their argument. A great example of this would be in Surah 23. It talks about embryology. And there's a lot of Muslims that argue that that the embryology in the Quran is so amazing, so scientifically accurate and precise that it must be from God. There's no way that Muhammad could have this scientific knowledge. Now, when I read Surah 23, and I talked about it in a video, I said, honestly, I'm not impressed with these verses. I don't think they're super accurate. I don't think the science is anything new or crazy. I don't think it's a good argument for the validity of the Quran, anything like that. I basically said, I'm not impressed with the embryology in the Quran. And the number one argument that I received from Muslims in the comment section was basically appealing to authority. There were a lot of Muslims who said something like, oh yeah, well, Dax, you're not a scholar. Oh yeah, well, Dax, do you have a degree in biology? Because if you don't, you're wrong. Or something like, oh yeah, well, Dax, I know this one biologist who is impressed with the embryology in the Quran. Therefore, he's right and you're wrong. Therefore, I'm going to listen to him and I'm not going to listen to you. These are really bad arguments. All of these arguments commit the appeal to authority fallacy. Basically, it's just saying, oh, you're not a scholar, I'm not going to listen to you. That guy's a scholar, I'm going to listen to him, he must be right. So here's the problem with these arguments and why these need to stop. First of all, just because someone isn't a scholar, that doesn't mean they're wrong. You don't have to be a scholar to be right about something, especially in today's world, right? It's 2023. We live in the age of information. We have YouTube videos and podcasts and books. Anyone can study something. Anyone can study the scholars, gather informed opinions, and then present those arguments. And the reasoning can be valid, and the evidence can be valid. It's as simple as that. You don't have to be a scholar to learn about something. If I say 2 + 2 = 4, and someone says, oh yeah, well, are you a scholar, Dax? Do you have a degree in math? No, I don't. But I know 2 + 2 = 4 because you don't have to be a scholar to know that. You don't have to have a degree in something to have knowledge about something. That's just not the world that we live in. The second thing, more importantly, just because someone is a scholar, that doesn't mean they're right. Scholars are wrong all the time. How do I know that? Because they change their minds. Scholars change their minds on things. That means that they're open to new information. They're open to being wrong because they're wrong on things. And then they correct course. And that's what happens when you actually care about truth. You should be open to having your mind changed. But without a doubt, just because someone is a scholar, that doesn't mean they're right. Or, more importantly, what happens when scholars disagree with each other, which happens all the time? When it came to the embryology, yes, there is a biologist out there who is impressed with the embryology in the Quran. But I also found some scholars who aren't impressed with the embryology in the Quran. So where do we go from here?
Now, I'm wondering whether this is the only example that you have come across, because I'm waiting for other type of, because this is a specific area that most people, I think, is not well versed in, and then that's why they would say, I would argue if they say that this is true because that guy say so. What? Because I assume, I hope many Muslims actually go into the details of what he have said, because that's where the amazing part is, right? Meaning why the words, because it depends on which scholar that is being mentioned. Because if we are talking about the same scholar that actually go and try to learn the Arabic words in the Quran to see what it meant, and then meaning from there where the amazing discovery about how come this meaning that is not in the normal translation, but it's more in depth in each of the words when it's scrutinized from the origin of the words, and we come to know that it implies this and this and this and this, and all of it match with what was being observed, etc. Right? So those are the intricate, amazing part of the conclusion. It's not about who says it. It's about what he discover and elaborate, and you can go straight there. So it's unfortunate if Muslim then bring that, oh, this is amazing, goes to other people. This is true because that guy says so. What? So that's unfortunate from my perspective, if that is the only example that he can think of.
You're just going to appeal to the scholar that you like, that agrees with you. I'm just going to appeal to the scholar that agrees with me, which means we're making ourselves the authority and not the actual scholarship, which is just not wise and kind of defeats the purpose. Without a doubt, a lot of Muslims commit the appeal to authority fallacy, and guys, this isn't a good way of reasoning. We're better than this. As a Christian, I shouldn't do this. As a Muslim, you shouldn't do this. As an atheist, you shouldn't do this. Instead, we should focus on the content of the arguments. We should focus on
I would agree with that totally.
the reasoning presented, rather than just if the person has a degree or not. If you're listening to me and you're like, oh, I'm not going to listen to you because you're not a scholar, that just shows that you're lazy. That just shows that you don't know how to think for yourself. Because just because I'm not a scholar, that doesn't mean I'm wrong. And just because someone is a scholar, that doesn't mean they're right. So instead of just blindly appealing to authorities, let's take the time to focus on reason. Let's try to think well. You can quote a scholar, but present their reason, present their arguments. You can present the argument of a scholar, but don't just blindly say, well, he's a scholar, he's right, and ignore someone. All right.
I hope that's not a statement that made by most Muslim. I hope, but yeah, because I notice what tend to happen in many of any type of content in YouTube, where whether it's go in the direction of one religion or the other, most under it just because what resonates to them, they just, oh, this is blah 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 blah, but they fail to understand the reasoning. I've seen this under Muslim content, under Christian content, under atheist content. It's like, for me, it's like, yeah. So that's unfortunate. But it's more problematic when they become more convinced of their conclusion, and then they go to others and they presented that. For in my common view, okay, So I have listened this from CP, Christian Prince. So he's right, you're wrong. I always ask, what is his reasoning to say that it's right? What is the reason that convince you? Listen for yourself, right? So Christians that do that, listen to Dex here. That's a fallacy that you're committing, right? So, and then some says that he knows more Arabic than you. He have experience as so and so and so, right? So those kind of argument it's always. And I hope if you are listening here, listen to what Dex is saying. No problem. If you are convinced, take his reasoning, share it with me, because I can refute most of Christian Prince's reasoning because I've heard many of them. It can be easily refuted. But if you just say, but he is Christian, then you are committing the same fallacy as he's sitting here, right? Because just because he is that guy, doesn't mean that what he's saying is correct.
In that way. This is just not the correct way to reason. So that's the third thing that I don't appreciate about Islam. And as we land this video,
that's not about Islam. That's not about Islam, truly. Especially number 3, that's about Muslim. Islam doesn't teach that. The only one that is free from fault is the prophets, because Allah governs the prophets. When the prophets makes mistake, he's being corrected. Be it Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have Surah Abasa. Be it what prophet there that end up in the belly of the fish, because Allah corrected them when they make a mistake, and then they correct themselves, right? So those are the only human being, because they are directly being governed by God, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are directly straight away corrected if they make a false or a mistake. Other human being, right, Islam teach that you cannot take any other human being, be how pious they are, how much of a scholar they are, as a legitimate source, as if they cannot make mistake. You cannot do that. So if he's saying that Islam teach that fallacy, it's I hope he's not. I don't think he's not. But because when he say he have problem with Islam, I assume he take Islam as including Muslim, not just Islamic teaching.
Let me say this. This is the final episode, the last episode of Christian Reads Quran. These have been my honest thoughts, things that I really do appreciate, things that honestly I don't appreciate, and I'm excited to move forward and continue to learn about Christianity and Islam. So, what can you expect moving forward? One thing is this. A lot of you guys mentioned Muhammad, his life based on the earliest sources by Martin Lings. Can you guys see that? There we go. A lot of you guys recommended this. I'm really excited to read it. Honestly, even though I've read the Quran, I still don't know what I believe about Muhammad. I don't know what I believe about his psychology or about his morality or about his motives. So I'm interested to learning more about his life and him.
That's interesting about that question, right? Because that question you don't actually get from the Quran. The Quran is just directly, you can get some sense of it, but if you read tafsir, you get more, because the tafsir will actually take from the seerah, from the hadith. But the Quran itself is just revelation that is being relayed. It's not Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam point of view. It's not his psychology or whatever. It's just relaying verbatim as such.
As a person, and then I can draw some conclusions about who I think he is. And then besides that, this is going to be the next video series on this channel. Can I get a drum roll, please? Probably couldn't hear that. The next video series on this channel is going to be Bible versus Quran. Which one is more reliable? I want this channel to be about comparing Christianity and Islam, the two largest religions in the world. And a great next step for that would be the Bible and Quran, because that's where the content of these religions come from. So I'm going to pose the question, can we trust the Bible? Can we trust the Quran? Are these books reliable? Have they been preserved well? That is what the next series is going to be about. Really looking forward to it. It's going to be great. And with that being said.
Okay, so that's the end, I think. And I'm very interested to see what is the reliability of the Bible, from what perspective that Christians really believe that it is reliable, not as a historical document, because that's one thing. Something to be reliable as a historical document is one thing. Something is to be relied as to this is what I should follow for my salvation. That's a totally different thing, right? That's how I see it. I'm not sure whether Christians distinguish the two or not, because many other historical events, when we see some transcript that says something, if it's definitely from that area, age, etc., then the reliability can be accepted, right? But that doesn't mean that, okay, whether we know who actually write this, what his character, etc., right? Meaning we don't know that information. So historical, but as a historical document, We don't scrutinize to that level, otherwise we can never say anything about the past. But for salvation, because the hadith and the Quran, the way the authenticity is being governed, so I'm wondering whether that is something that is also observed in the Bible, or that's not a factor. As long as it's a good, reliable historical document, we can take it. So that's where I'm interested to see. From what I have heard before, about the argument about the reliability of the Bible is most likely from the perspective of historical document. If that is the conclusion, this is a reliable historical document, I have no problem. I have no problem saying that some author back then saw Jesus as this. Fine. My question is, who is he? Do you know his agent? Those kind of question whether you can answer, right? So that's two different things about reliability as the source from God and reliability as a historical document. Anyway, so that's it for this video. I think this is long enough. Thank you for watching. See you next time.